Top 4 Washington Quarters Worth Big Money. Welcome to Numismatic Vault Extra. Today, we're exploring the top 4 most valuable Washington quarter dollars from the United States of America, United States. In this video, we'll break down their current market values, highlight famous era coins, and explain the specific conditions that make certain Washington quarters extremely rare, including silver content and unique color shades that have become major players in the coin collector and investor world. These rare treasures are more than just pieces of history. They're some of the most valuable coins collectors are actively hunting today. So, if you're a coin enthusiast or someone who appreciates the beauty and significance of American currency, backhand index pointing right, this video is for you. Let's get started with the first coin. Magnifying glass tilted left. The story of the 1977 Washington quarter begins in a year when America's everyday life was both familiar and quietly shifting. The nation had passed through the social turbulence of the 1960s and 1970s and was standing on the brink of the energy of the 1980s, eager for innovation yet rooted in tradition. In pockets all across the United States, coins passed from hand to hand as ordinary tools of commerce, but even the most common of these, like the Washington quarter, carried within it the pulse of American history. In 1977, the coin bore the dignified profile of George Washington, a man whose presence in American consciousness stretched from the Revolution to the modern era. His image on the quarter offered stability and continuity. It was a face Americans saw every day, engraved in metal yet echoing the story of leadership, sacrifice, and the birth of a nation. That quiet gravitas made even the simplest Washington quarter feel more than just money. It felt like a fragment of heritage. The Denver Mint, designated by the small but meaningful D mint mark, struck this coin with efficient precision. Denver was known for its powerful presses and relentless production, churning out millions of coins to meet the needs of a bustling economy. Most of those Washington quarters, including the 1977 issues, were simply pocket change. They bought snacks, subway tokens, bus rides, and parking meters. To everyday Americans, they were familiar and unremarkable. Yet, in the world of coin collecting, where every scratch, shine, and subtle variation tells a story, the 1977 quarter holds a different kind of magic. While the coin was not made of silver and was never intended to be a collectible rarity, the idea that something so ordinary could one day become astonishingly valuable is precisely what fuels the fascination. When collectors study coins, they are not just looking at metal, they are listening for history's hidden whispers. Imagine millions of these quarters circulating widely, their edges softened by time, their surfaces worn smooth by decades of use. Most of them never passed a day without the thousands of micro-touches that dull their original brilliance. Yet among them, a rare few escaped wear and tear, fortunate survivors that slipped into safes, drawers, albums, and forgotten jars. These survivors are the ones that captivate those who know how to look closely. Condition is everything in coin collecting. A Washington quarter that still retains original mint luster, undiminished shine, razor-sharp details on Washington's profile, and crisp lettering, is not just a coin, it is a time capsule. It is as though that single quarter stepped out of 1977 and onto a pedestal, untouched by decades of circulation. Holding such a piece feels almost surreal, like touching a preserved moment in time. Collectors speak of these pristine survivors with awe because they are vanishingly rare. Most quarters minted in 1977 were spent, lost, or worn down long before anyone came to appreciate their historical resonance. Only a tiny fraction avoided such wear, perhaps tucked away by a curious collector of the time, or left behind in a forgotten stash of spare change. The rarity of these survivors creates a mystique that draws collectors near and makes their stories unforgettable. But rarity alone does not make a coin valuable. The emotional story behind it, the sense that something common could harbor incredible worth, is what gives this coin its unique allure. People imagine discovering one by chance, lifting it from an old jar of coins, and realizing that this ordinary quarter might be something extraordinary. It's the thrill of possibility, the quiet hope that greatness can be hidden anywhere. There are also whispers among numismatists about subtle variations, slight dye differences, odd striking characteristics, or unusual surface tones that set individual coins apart. Whether these are known errors or simply natural variation, the idea that a 1977 D quarter might hold an unexpected twist adds to the excitement. In the world of collectors, even a tiny anomaly can turn a standard coin into a prized treasure. The emotional connection to this coin goes beyond market value. A 1977 D quarter reminds us of a time when physical currency was an everyday lifeline, before digital payments and credit cards dominated. It carries the tactile memory of jingling pockets, cash register trays, and coin jars on kitchen counters. It connects people to the rhythm of life in a way that intangible numbers on a screen cannot. Collectors often speak about the joy of discovery, the moment when a coin that seems ordinary transforms into something extraordinary under the eye of someone who knows what to look for. That moment is electric, heart-racing, breath-quickening, mind-flooding with possibilities. This is what keeps coin lovers turning over each piece of change they encounter, hopeful that today might be the day they find something remarkable. In the modern coin market, coins from the 1970s and later are typically not seen as wildly valuable on the surface. But the deeper one looks, the more one begins to understand that value is not only about age, it is about condition, rarity, and story. A 1977 D Washington quarter that has survived decades in pristine state becomes more than currency. It becomes a symbol of resilience and a testament to what endures. And in the rarest cases, certain survivors rise above even high-grade expectations. These are the coins that fuel legends, the kind of specimens that drive bidding wars, draw gasps at auctions, and become talking points among seasoned collectors. To hold such a quarter is to hold a potential masterpiece, a tiny disc that captures the imagination and commands respect. The emotional fabric of this coin is woven from both past and present. It speaks to the era in which it was minted, the hopes and anxieties of late 1970s America, and to the future legacy it carries. When someone discovers an exceptional example, they are not just uncovering a coin, they are uncovering a piece of shared history, a tangible link to a moment most of us never saw. And that is part of what makes numismatics so compelling. The sense that history is not remote, archived in musty volumes, but alive in the objects we pass by every day. A quarter like the 1977 D Washington can be ordinary to some, and extraordinary to others, depending on how closely one dares to look. So if you ever come across a Washington quarter that seems to shine too brightly, that feels too sharp, that seems to whisper of stories long forgotten, take another look. Hold it in your hand. Feel its weight. Imagine the countless pockets it has passed through, the countless transactions it has completed, and the remarkable journey it has survived. For the lucky collector who treasures an exceptional example, one untouched by decades of circulation and rich with rare qualities, this coin represents possibility. It represents history. It represents the notion that even the smallest object can carry vast significance, and that sometimes, just sometimes, a coin that looks ordinary can unlock a door to something extraordinary, a moment that changes everything overnight. Next coin. The 1965 Washington quarter begins in an era when the United States teetered between tradition and transformation. The mid-1960s were a time of social awakening, powerful change, and energetic progress. Families were on the move, cities were growing up, and a new generation was itching to make its mark. In the midst of that cultural swirl, the Washington quarter, a humble coin worth just 25 cents, became something more than mere currency. It became a witness to decades of everyday life, quietly passing through the hands of millions, connecting ordinary moments to the pulse of a nation. In 1965, coins struck in Philadelphia carried no mint mark. That simple absence, no tiny letter beneath the date, identifies these pieces as originating from the oldest and most storied mint in the United States. Philadelphia had been producing coins since the beginning of the Republic. To hold a 1965 quarter with no mint mark is to touch a lineage of craftsmanship that stretches back through history, echoing the evolution of the country itself. The design of the Washington quarter was already iconic by 1965, nearly 30 years after its introduction in 1932. On the obverse, the steadfast profile of George Washington gazed out, a dignified visage that conveyed strength, resilience, and calm. He had led a fragile, fledgling nation into independence, and now his image adorned a coin traveling through the pockets of a modern superpower. His face on this quarter is more than engraving, it's heritage. As you flip the coin to the reverse, the powerful eagle stands with wings spread, gripping arrows and olive branches, symbols of America's readiness and peace. In 1965, this image resonated deeply. The world was changing fast. Space exploration had captured imaginations. Cold War tensions shaped foreign policy, and the civil rights movement redefined the idea of equality. Through it all, everyday coins, like the Washington quarter, moved silently alongside the people living these moments. The 1965 quarter was not struck in silver. In 1965, coinage shifted away from the 90% silver composition that defined earlier decades, a reflection of economic realities and changing minting practices. But just because it was no longer silver does not mean it lost significance. Its value was not in the metal itself, but in the story coded into every line of its design, and in the dozens of hands through which it would pass in the years ahead. To most people at the time, a 1965 quarter was simply currency, something for soda machines, transit fares, or small purchases. Few paused to consider that these coins would become touchstones for memory decades later. But for collectors who study coins with passion and precision, even unremarkable issues like the 1965 Washington quarter can hold untapped potential, especially when rare survivors show up in extraordinary condition. Condition determines destiny in the coin world. A quarter that has been circulated, scraped, nicked, and worn by use tells the story of days and quarters spent. But when a coin escapes that fate, preserved in near-mint brilliance, it becomes something far more special. Imagine finding a 1965 quarter so sharp and radiant that its surfaces still catch the light like it was minted yesterday. That coin is not just old, it is exceptional. Collectors refer to such pieces as survivors, coins that somehow eluded the relentless wear of circulation and instead remain tucked away, maybe in a drawer, album, or coin jar. As the years marched on, fewer and fewer 1965 quarters held onto their original beauty. Those that did became rarer, and with rarity comes intrigue, and with intrigue comes value that sometimes soars far beyond face value. Even without silver content, beauty and preservation can elevate a 1965 quarter to a coveted collectible. The rich, reflective surfaces on an uncirculated example, the crisp details on Washington's visage, and the untouched eagle feathers on the reverse can all make coins like this stand out. When a coin keeps its original luster intact for 6 decades, it carries energy, a kind of quiet magic that only collectors truly understand. And then there are stories, whispered in numismatic circles, of unusual strikes and subtle variations. A slight deviation in the die, a softer impression here, a stronger detail there. These nuances may seem trivial to the casual observer, but to a collector they can be the difference between a common coin and a prized treasure. For some 1965 quarters, it's the story hidden in the details that transforms them from ordinary to remarkable. It is the combination of history, rarity, and condition that gives these coins their power. A surviving 1965 quarter in superb condition might not dazzle with precious metal, but it can shine with the weight of decades of history. It becomes a tiny mirror reflecting life in America from Main Street to Wall Street, from the suburbs to the city, from everyday commerce to the careful eye of the collector. Imagine someone discovering such a quarter after decades of it sitting untouched in a family album or dusty jar. The thrill of recognizing that what seemed like an ordinary coin might be a rare survivor is indescribable. That moment, the heartbeat, the breath catch, the spark of possibility, is the same moment that transforms a hobby into an obsession. It is the moment that turns ordinary metal into treasure. Of course, most 1965 quarters remain common and easily found in circulation. But the heart of the collector lies in searching for the extraordinary among the ordinary. Each coin is a chance encounter with the past, a connection to the countless moments and hands that have held it. When someone finds a quarter that has endured with exceptional preservation, they are not just holding a coin, they are holding a piece of time itself. And that possibility, the idea that a coin once so ordinary could one day be recognized as rare and valuable, is what keeps collectors scanning pocket change, opening old coin albums, and sifting through dusty drawers. The notion that a single piece of metal could shift someone's financial horizon overnight strikes at the heart of why people collect: hope, curiosity, and the thrill of hidden potential. But the true value of a 1965 quarter isn't just in monetary exchange. It lies in connection to history, to heritage, to moments that shape the nation and the lives of everyday people. It is a reminder that value is not only in precious metals or ancient artifacts, but in the stories woven into the ordinary objects of life. So when you hold a 1965 Washington quarter, especially one that still shines like new, you are holding more than currency. You are holding context, memory, hope, and possibility all at once. You are holding a testament to survival and time's subtle power. And if you are lucky enough to find one in exceptional condition, you may discover not just a rare coin, but a fragment of history that has the power to astonish, to inspire, and perhaps to change your life forever. Next coin. The story of the 1995 P. Washington quarter begins not with silver or precious metals, but with continuity, the steady beat of American life moving forward through the 20th century. It was a year when pocket change still mattered, when coins were tangible companions to every transaction, and when the familiar silhouette of George Washington remained a reassuring face in the palm of the hand. In 1995, Americans were woven into a fast-changing world, technology on the rise, culture shifting shape, but the Washington quarter was a familiar constant, bridging past and present with quiet dignity. On the obverse, George Washington's profile communicates both strength and reflection. It is a portrait chosen in 1932, yet still meaningful more than 6 decades later, a representation of leadership, courage, and the enduring spirit of the American experiment. Washington's gaze, engraved with precision on every quarter, connected everyday spenders to the lineage of history every time they reached for change. That connection is part of what makes even common coins feel profound when you take a moment to look deeper. Philadelphia's mint mark, the simple P, identifies that this 1995 quarter was struck in the nation's oldest and most storied mint. Philadelphia had minted coins since the earliest years of the Republic, and to hold a coin from this facility is to hold a piece of that long, unbroken lineage. Yet in 1995, few people paid attention to mint marks or studied the subtleties of strikes. Most quarters were destined for pockets, candy machines, and cash drawers, not albums or auctions. And yet, for collectors, every coin carries more than monetary value. It carries story. The 1995p Washington quarter circulated in an era just before digital wallets and online banking would begin to change the way people think about money forever. It was a coin still deeply tied to the tactile experience of commerce. Sliding it into a meter, dropping it into a parking kiosk, paying for a soda, tipping a musician. It lived in the rhythm of real life. For decades, millions of these coins were used and worn. They rubbed against keys, slipped through tills, and aged with every exchange. Most 1995p quarters show the wear of use. Softened details, surfaces bathed in the patina of time, edges that once were crisp now rounded. But those same factors are what make the few surviving pristine examples so remarkable. In a world where most coins are worn by life, the outliers, those that survived unscathed, are whispers of possibility. Condition is everything in numismatics. When a coin, once struck with shiny new metal, retains its original brilliance decades later, it becomes something far more than face value. Collectors call these survivors, mint state, untouched by the countless exchanges ordinary coins endure. To hold such a coin is to hold a small fragment of 1995 suspended in time, a sharp echo of the moment before where could blur its features. And that single moment, whether frozen in sharp detail or gently worn by time, is the heartbeat of the collector's dream. What makes coins like the 1995p quarter exciting is not simply age or rarity, but survival against odds. After nearly 30 years of use, most coins lose their luster, but a tiny fraction retain it, shimmering ever so slightly in the light, as if refusing to surrender to time. Imagine uncovering such a coin after years tucked away unnoticed, perhaps in an old jar of mixed change, or at the bottom of a forgotten dresser drawer. You pick it up, turn it over in your hand, and notice that quiet glow, that luster that shouldn't be there after decades. The edge is still clean, the lettering sharp. Washington's profile is crisp, as if it had just left the mint. It's in that moment that the ordinary becomes extraordinary. But what truly ignites the imagination is the possibility of variations, tiny differences in the minting process that can make one example stand apart from all others. It could be a slightly off-center strike, a subtle doubling of letters, an unusual planchet characteristic, almost invisible to the untrained eye but monumental to a collector who knows what to look for. These rare anomalies are the kinds of details that can elevate a simple quarter from being merely collectible to something coveted, rare, and potentially life-changing. In the collector community, coins that combine spectacular condition with unusual features can command prices that defy expectations. They are not silver coins, and they were not meant to be rare, yet they gain their extraordinary status through survival and uniqueness. When such a coin appears at auction, pristine, perfect, and distinct, the bidding can escalate beyond imagination. The emotional allure of coins, like the 1995p Washington quarter, goes beyond money. It is tied to the narrative of everyday life, to the hands that pass the coin along, to the people, places, and small moments it witnessed. A coin in remarkable condition is like a silent witness to all those anonymous stories, preserved against wear and waiting for someone with an attentive eye to give it a second life. In the broader tapestry of American numismatics, the Washington Quarter series holds a special place. It is both historic and modern, bridging generations of currency users. The 1995 issue sits at a crossroads, late enough to feel familiar to many people alive today, yet old enough that its survivors, untouched and shining, have earned a coveted status among collectors. Collectors whisper about finding such coins in unexpected places: a jar labeled "Change," a thrift store find, a forgotten collection inherited from a relative. These stories fuel the passion for coin hunting. They remind people that value isn't always obvious, and that sometimes the most profound discoveries are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to examine each coin carefully. The idea that a single quarter, humble, common, and overlooked, could one day be valued at a staggering price is part of what makes coin collecting so compelling. It blends history, chance, sentiment, and discovery. The coin that once slipped through everyday life might be the same coin that astonishes the world decades later. In the end, the 1995 P. Washington quarter is more than metal stamped with dates and designs. It is a testament to time, survival, and the subtle poetry of everyday objects. It reminds us that even the most ordinary things can hold extraordinary stories, and that value is not always apparent until someone takes the time to look closely. For the lucky collector who discovers an exceptional example, that quarter may represent not just a piece of history, but a moment that changes a life forever. Next coin. The story of the 1979 D. Washington quarter begins in the quiet corners of daily life, in the change jangled out of wallets, slipped into cash registers, and passed across countertops. In 1979, this coin was not special. It was just another quarter in circulation. Yet over time, something remarkable happened. What was once ordinary became curious, then collectible, and for a lucky few, potentially life-changing. The journey of this quarter is not just about metal and minting. It is about history, survival, and the kind of hidden value that whispers rather than shouts. In 1979, the United States was navigating a world of change. The energy of the 1970s was giving way to the technological leaps of the 1980s, and everyday life carried a mix of nostalgia and anticipation. People used coins casually, for parking meters, jukeboxes, vending machines, and pay phones. The Washington quarter, with its familiar portrait of America's first president, was such a fixture that most never bothered to study it. Its design was steady and iconic, a reminder of national beginnings even as the country looked forward. On the obverse of the coin, George Washington's profile stands dignified and composed, a symbol that had adorned the quarter for decades. His image served as a daily connection to America's founding, a silent guardian in the pockets of millions. For the people who carried these coins, Washington was a familiar face rather than a relic of distant history. But for collectors, that very familiarity would one day become part of the coin's allure. The Denver Mint, marked by the small D beneath the date, struck this coin with precision and consistency. Philadelphia may have been the oldest mint, but Denver was the workhorse that kept America's change flowing. In 1979 alone, millions of these quarters were struck and released into circulation. Few were set aside or saved. Most were meant to be used, not admired. They were everyday currency, not heirlooms. But time has a way of transforming the mundane into the fascinating. Coins that were once ordinary become relics of an era that no longer exists. The clink of loose change in pocket doors once accompanied by payphones and paper receipts now feels nostalgic. The Washington quarter from 1979 became a symbol of that vanished era, a moment when physical money still mattered in every purchase, every interaction. What truly elevates the 1979 D quarter in collector circles is the possibility of extraordinary survival. Most coins from that year show the wear of decades of use, softened surfaces, rubbed details, and loss of original luster. But a precious few escaped such wear. Some quarters retain a brilliance that seems impossible for a coin that has circulated for nearly half a century. These rare survivors hint at stories untold, misplaced in jars, forgotten in albums, or tucked into collections without fanfare. Imagine pulling an untouched 1979 D quarter from an old coin roll and seeing its surfaces still gleam. The delicate lines of Washington's hair, the fine lettering around the rim, the detailed feathers on the eagle, all remain as crisp as the day they were struck. To the untrained eye, it might look like any other coin. But for the collector who knows what to look for, that brilliance is a beacon of rarity and possibility. Condition is the heartbeat of coin collecting. A coin that has avoided wear carries an energy of survival, a kind of silent resilience. Collectors speak of mint state examples, coins that escaped circulation and remain as they were when they left the mint. These coins are rare by definition, because everyday life rarely allows such pristine preservation. That is what makes the 1970-90 quarter so enticing. In a world where most coins are worn and forgettable, a flawless example stands apart. Beyond condition, there is the evergreen thrill of variation and anomaly. In any large mintage, tiny differences in striking pressure, die alignment, or planchet quality can produce subtle variations. Some of these are so slight that only a trained eye can detect them, yet they can dramatically affect a coin's desirability among collectors. The idea that one might hold a coin with an unexpected flourish, a quirk that sets it apart, adds a layer of mystery that feeding the imagination. Collectors often share stories of discovering valuable coins in the most ordinary places. A jar of change in a kitchen drawer, a forgotten album passed down through generations, a loose roll picked up at a bank. The moment of realization, when someone sees something ordinary and then suddenly extraordinary, is electric. A simple quarter becomes a whispered legend. That is part of the magic of coins, like the 1979 Washington quarter. The coin's journey through decades of circulation and survival also reflects the evolution of American life. In 1979, people still used physical money for countless transactions. Today, digital payments and plastic cards have replaced many of those everyday cash exchanges. The quarter stands as a reminder of a tactile era, a time when money had weight and texture and sound. For collectors, this connection to lived experience deepens the coin's emotional value. It is not just about rarity, it is about connection. A coin that once bought a soda or paid for a phone call carries echoes of the lives it touched. When a collector holds a rare, well-preserved 1979 quarter, they hold not just metal, but a thread woven through countless moments of ordinary life. That emotional resonance turns coins into touchstones of memory and history. As time marches on, the number of 1979 quarters surviving in pristine condition continues to shrink. Each year, more coins succumb to wear, loss, or disposal. What remains intact becomes more precious simply because it has endured. Scarcity drives demand, not just for the sake of value, but because every survivor has a story that most coins never get to tell. There is also the human element, the joy of discovery. Collectors do not merely accumulate coins. They seek stories, connections, and the thrill of uncovering something remarkable. The 1979 quarter embodies that quest. It invites scrutiny, inspires curiosity, and rewards those who look closely. In the world of numismatics, sometimes the greatest treasures are the ones hiding in plain sight. People often think of rare coins as ancient or exotic, but sometimes rarity and potential value exist in the relatively recent past. A coin like the 1979 quarter, born in the pockets and purses of everyday Americans, can still hold immense fascination and worth if it has survived untouched. It stands as a reminder that even ordinary objects can become extraordinary with the passage of time. In the end, the 1979 Washington quarter is more than a piece of metal. It is a vessel of history, survival, and possibility. For someone who discovers a rare, well-preserved example, it is not just a collectible. It is a connection to the past and a testament to the thrill of discovery. The coin's value, in both emotion and rarity, continues to grow as time moves forward, turning what was once ordinary into something truly remarkable. And for the person fortunate enough to hold one of these rare survivors today, that quarter may represent not just the history of a nation, but the promise of unexpected fortune, a tiny slice of metal with the power to astonish, to inspire, and yes, in the right circumstance, to change a life forever.